Okay, so we're gonna move on to the cap shingles now. This is a cut cap shingle. I like to make my own. You can pre-buy or buy the pre-made cap shingles. Those are really nice, but they're usually about twice as expensive as just buying some 3-tab shingles. So this is a 3-tab shingle, and you can actually make your own cap shingles out of these. I know these are brown. I couldn't find any black ones for the purpose of this video, but you'd want to buy the same color shingle as you used on the roof. And what you can do is you can actually slice these into 3 and make 3 cap shingles. So all you have to do is in between each tab there is a groove here, and what we're going to do is we're going to split that groove in half. There's a little radius here. So I just like to use my speed square here, line it up right in the middle of that radius and make a slice, and then you have a cap shingle. So as you cut these out, what I like to do is, just like on these, I go ahead and slice off the edges. And the reason for that is, if you had a few of these, I'll make a couple more here. As you line these up, the edges like to show. So I have a shingle here, would overlap another shingle here. And as you keep overlapping these, you can see that the edges here, you can still see these black edges. So what I like to do is I like to go ahead and trim these shingles so these edges just come off. It's not going to affect anything as you're going to nail in this tar strip here. So to do that, I just like to flip it over, and I like to keep the good side away from me. The reason for that is you have a lot of control where you start the knife, and you want to start it right at the top of that radius here and slice away. So you don't want to take off too much. There's no real measurement. Just take off a little bit. You're just trying to hide the edge. What you don't want to do is you don't want to remove this whole section. So just take off a little bit and do both sides here. And then your cap shingle is ready to go. So one thing to mention with cutting that, like I said, I like to keep the good side away from me. If you accidentally went this way and started slicing, you might accidentally slice into the good part of your shingle. So just put the good part of the shingle away from you, and then slice away from it. That way you don't accidentally hit any of it. So we'll go ahead and make a few more of these, and then we'll go up to the roof to install them. Okay, so we've moved back up to the roof here, and we're gonna go ahead and install our cap shingles along our dormer here. So if you remember, we had our cap shingles that we just cut, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna bend them over the top of our ridge here and go ahead and nail them off along the edge, or along this whole ridge here. So if you remember, we sliced these 3-tab shingles right up the middle of this radius here, and we can actually use what's left over of that radius as our guide to stagger these. But before we actually start putting these in place, we need to figure out our chalk line to be able to run these straight. So what I've done is I've measured the width of these guys, and I think they came out to 11 3/4. So half of that would be what, 5 7/8. Yeah, 5 7/8. So what we do is we'll take a chalk line here, and to the best of what we can here, we'll measure down 5 7/8 and make a little mark here. Do the same here, and I know the roof is kind of rounded, but you can kind of just eyeball where it should be, where the peak would be, and then mark it out here. And then what we'll do is we'll just do a chalk line along this ridge here, and that'll keep this ridge cap going nice and straight. So it looks like about right there. And what I like to do is I like to just do one side. As long as you're on that one chalk line, your other side will run pretty straight as well. What happens if you try to do two sides? Sometimes you might cut one of these shingles a little skinnier, and you might try to put a shingle on this line, and then you'll do a few on that side, and then you'll come back and do a few on this side, and it just doesn't end up as straight. So just snap on one side, and that'll be more than fine to get a nice straight line. So what you can do then is you'll put this cap shingle right on that line and then fold it over, and then we'll go ahead and nail it off. One important thing to mention when nailing off these cap shingles here, we want to be using 1 3/4 nails. Basically we have a couple layers of shingles here, and we just want to make sure that we have a good nailing holding surface here into the ridge. And two, we might be using some ridge vent, which we'll talk about in a minute. And we want to make sure we have plenty of length to get through that ridge vent as well. So what we're going to do here is, again, put this on the line here. And what we want to do is nail right in this tar strip. And we'll do one on this side. And then we'll do one on this side. Just making sure it's lined up nice and straight. Okay. There we go. And then what we can do is get our next shingle here. And again, that radius that we split in half, we're gonna line the bottom part of this shingle up with the radius of the shingle in front of it. So go ahead and put this guy on here, line it up to our line, and line it up to the top of our radius here. We'll get a nail in our tar strip. Then bend it over and nail on the other side, making sure it's nice and straight. And then a nail on this tar strip on this side as well. All right, so that's the whole process. You just keep doing that all the way along your ridge, making sure to line it up with your chalk line and getting those 1 3/4 nails into the tar strip. You only want to do one on each side. That's going to be more than enough to hold these guys. And then you would continue it until you finish out the whole ridge. So one comment about dormer ridges here. It's real important. A lot of times a dormer won't end up at the same height as the rest of your roof like this does. Let's say this is a little bit further on down the roof and it runs into the roof and your house roof continues to go up a slope here. So what you'll want to do is before you continue shingling the rest of the house, you want to make sure that this valley is completely shingled, and then run your cap shingles up to this point, and then run another 1 or 2 up the slope of that rest of the roof up here. The reason for that, when you shingle the rest of the house, those shingles then will overlap this cap shingle, and you'll have a nice weather tight overlap right here. So if you went ahead and shingled the rest of your house, you'd basically have to take the shingles off of that area to be able to run this cap properly. If you don't overlap it, water's just going to run right into this most vulnerable point here, and you're just going to have a bunch of leaks. So make sure that we go ahead and do all of the cap on any dormers or any part of a roof that intersects into another major part of a roof. The second thing I wanted to point out here, we're just doing the cap on our dormer right here. But if we were to be doing the cap on our rest of our house here, this is over finished space. This is just a false dormer, so there's nothing inside it. Doesn't need to be vented. This finished space does need to be vented. We have our vented soffit, so we need to be able to have an area here for that air to be able to flow through here. So what we have here is some ridge vent, and how this works, basically it's just going to go over the ridge just like our cap shingles. There's pre-drilled holes here for your nails. Again, we're going to want to use those 1 3/4 inch nails, making sure it has enough holding power. Then you would snap your line, or some of these even have some guidelines on them already if they work out for your cap shingles. And you would then install your cap shingles over this, through it into your shingles and OSB roof sheathing. The biggest thing about using this ridge vent here is along your ridge, you don't want any overlapping shingles. You basically want an air gap here. This stuff recommends 1.5 inches on both sides to create a 3-inch hole at the top here. So what you would do is you would take a circular saw and come down 1.5 inches on this side, 1.5 inches on this side, and go ahead and cut a hole into the peak of the roof here. That way that would allow air to circulate from the attic out through this ridge vent, and that would complete that cycle of through the soffit and out the peak of the roof to be able to vent your attic space. Okay, so it's just real important to make sure that you have that proper airspace, whatever the manufacturer recommends with this ridge vent here. If you don't have ridge vent, I do like to overlap the shingles here. I don't like to cut them off nice and flush with the edge of the ridge. The reason for that, one, it's just an extra layer of protection. We have a layer on this side overlapping, a layer over this that's on this side. That's 2 extra layers to protect this ridge. But the thing that I like better is that it kind of creates a rounded surface here. It's just a much less hard point for our cap shingles here. It actually makes it a much gradual curve here. That way our cap shingles don't tend to break on that point. So if you have no ridge vent, it's more than okay to overlap your shingles up top here. So once your dormers or intersecting roofs are capped and then the rest of your roof is shingled, you can go ahead and cap the top of this roof's ridge. Again, installing ridge vent where needed. And then you'll have a fully shingled roof.